We all throw around the term the cloud pretty much every single day, right? But have you ever actually stopped and thought, what is it? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on this amazing technology and find out how one company, Amazon Web Services, or AWS, kind of quietly ended up running the internet. So let's dive in. And that is a fantastic question, because the answer really gets to the heart of all this. See, the internet isn't just some magical mist floating around us. It's real. It's physical. It's a massive network of actual computers. And for the longest time, just managing those computers was this huge, expensive nightmare for anyone trying to build a business online. So before the cloud came along, if you wanted to start a website, it was kind of like wanting to open a restaurant. You couldn't just rent a kitchen. No. You had to build the whole thing from scratch. Buy all the ovens, the fridges, hire a whole crew to keep it all running. You had to build your own data center. And that was a massive headache. I mean, just picture it. You'd have to go out and buy these giant racks, just rows and rows of servers from companies like IBM or HP. Then you need a special building with industrial strength air conditioning just to stop the whole thing from overheating. And on top of all that, you've got this crazy rat's nest of cables and a whole team of engineers you have to keep on call 24/7 for when things, and trust me, they did, inevitably broke. So this old way of doing things, it really had three huge problems. First, it was just ridiculously expensive. You weren't just buying servers, you were paying for the building, the crazy electricity bills, and a small army of people. Second, it was wildly inefficient. And third, the constant upkeep, it was just a soul-crushing chore that took you away from actually building your business. And this quote, man, it just nails the inefficiency problem. See, in the old model, one server was dedicated to just one application. So if your app only needed a tiny bit of that server's power, the rest of it just sat there, humming away, burning electricity and money. The scale of this waste across thousands of companies was just enormous. Okay, so you've got this system that's just ridiculously expensive and super wasteful. Clearly, there had to be a better way, right? And thankfully, there was. It was a revolutionary idea that would completely flip how we think about computing on its head, and it was called the cloud. The real secret sauce, the magic behind the cloud, is a technology called virtualization. Now think of it like this. Instead of having one big physical house for just one family, virtualization lets you turn that house into a whole apartment building. Each family gets their own separate, totally secure apartment. In the same way, you can now run lots of different applications on a single physical server. It was a massive, massive leap in efficiency. So this really breaks down that whole evolution perfectly. We started with the old way, right? One server, one app. Super inefficient. Then virtualization came along and let us be way smarter with our hardware. But the real revolution, the thing that changed everything, was the cloud. The idea that you could access all that computing power as a utility. Just like electricity or water, from anywhere in the world. Okay, so this new way of doing things, it's split off into two different paths, the public cloud and the private cloud. And the key difference between them really just boils down to one simple question. Who's the one that owns and operates all that hardware? All right, so on one side, you have the private cloud. That's where a company still owns and manages its own data center, but they're using virtualization to make it more efficient. But the public cloud, that's where companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google had this stroke of genius. They'd already built these massive world-class data centers for themselves, and then they thought, hey, why don't we just rent out slices of this to anyone who needs it? And the public cloud was an absolute game changer. It wasn't just about saving money. It was really about speed and freedom. All of a sudden, a tiny startup in a garage could launch a global service in a few hours. I mean, that's something that would have taken months and millions of dollars in the old world. You could innovate at the speed of thought and only pay for exactly what you used. No more waste. Now, this whole public cloud thing was a fantastic idea, right? But there was one company that saw where this was all going years before anybody else. And that's the reason why Amazon Web Services, AWS, is still the undisputed king. It all comes down to being the first one to the party. I mean, look at this. AWS had a massive head start. Back when businesses were just starting to move to the cloud, AWS wasn't just an option. A lot of the time, it was the only real game in town. And once you've built your entire company's infrastructure on one platform, it is incredibly difficult and expensive to switch. That created this powerful, sticky effect that has kept AWS right at the top.
And the thing is, AWS didn't just sit back and relax. They have been constantly, relentlessly adding more and more services. Today, it's not just about renting a virtual server anymore. Oh no. AWS offers over 200 different services, everything from databases and AI to complex tools for managing applications. It is, by far, the most complete platform out there.
And yeah, the numbers really tell the story. You can see it right here. AWS still has this commanding lead in the market. Now, Microsoft's Azure and Google Cloud, they're growing fast for sure, but they are still playing catch up to the company that basically invented this entire industry. So the big question is this dominance by the cloud going to last forever? Because lately you might have heard some buzz about something called cloud repatriation. It's this idea that companies are actually leaving the public cloud and going back to building their own stuff. So, what's the real story there?
So, what's the deal? Is this a real trend? Are we seeing some kind of mass exodus from the public cloud? Well, when you look at the actual data, the answer is a pretty clear no. It turns out that a tiny, tiny fraction of companies, we're talking maybe 1 to 2%, are moving some workloads back in-house. And they usually have very specific reasons for doing it. But the vast majority, 98, 99%, they're staying put or moving more stuff to the public cloud. So here's the bottom line. You might see some headlines here and there, but the public cloud isn't going anywhere. Its core advantages, that speed, that agility, that cost effectiveness, are more important today than they've ever been. For the foreseeable future, it's just going to remain the default go-to choice for building and running modern applications. You know, when you think about it, the journey from those clunky, expensive servers in a back room to this global, on-demand supercomputer that we call the cloud, is just mind-blowing. It really shows you the power of a single great idea. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? What's next? What's the next big thing that's being cooked up in a garage right now that's going to seem as totally obvious and essential in 15 years as the cloud does to us today?